We all know that the right habits and mindsets can be transformational in how we live our lives. But among the sea of advice online, it can be challenging to know who to trust with these important life decisions. At The Standard, we answer those questions and introduce you to some of the most successful people in the world in their fields and the habits and the mindsets they use to achieve their success. To learn more about our social platform, head on over to www.thestandardapp.com. And now, your host, myself, Chris Pallatroni. Welcome to another episode of The Standard. I am your host, Chris Pallatroni, and today's guest is Lamonte Goode. He is the founder of CyberYoga, which stands for calisthenics, yoga, breakdown, evolution, and revolution. I've known Lamonte for a few years now. He was one of the original guests that shared, or one of the original contributors, I should say, that shared some of their habits on the Standard platform. So I was really excited to dig into his background. And he's got such a great message. This is a person that had a little bit of a traumatic childhood, dealing with domestic violence and abuse. He grew up in Southern California and just shares what his journey was like being a young man living with his mom and his brother and sort of dealing with some of the hurt and the trauma that he had at a very early age. He talks about his passion for being an artist and breakdancing and some of the people that influenced and sort of shaped his identity as a youth. And then the instrumental role that yoga played in his life and how he's been able to combine the physical and the mental and the spirituality of yoga to really heal himself, and how medicine and psychedelics have played a role into that as well. And really what cyber yoga is meant for other people and inspiring them and helping them along their own journeys. He's just got a beautiful message. I really resonate with cyber yoga and what that's about. In this particular episode, he'll share a little bit of his best habit, his best mindset, and how gratitude has really helped shape his life, and how letting go has been fundamental as well, and sort of give us a sense of sort of the bedrock in which he operates from every single day. And then he'll talk a little bit about his practice and why that's really instrumental for him, how he weaves in the ideas of self-compassion and love. And one of the really big topics that comes up a lot throughout this episode is the idea of God, is the idea of love, is the idea of self-compassion. This is a really smart person who's really creative and is really doing the best job he can to inspire as many people to become the best version of themselves. So love everything that Lamonte stands for. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome Lamonte Goode. Well, man, I'm excited to talk to you, Lamonte. Obviously, we've known each other for a couple of years. You've shared some of your own habits on the Standard platform. And when I reached out to you, this podcast is really just an opportunity to dive more into the background, the mental health, the wellness, and then really get specific as to like a habit, a mindset that really supports people. So I've been indulging myself and doing a lot of research on you and just trying to understand, the history behind the man, why you created cyber yoga, a little bit of your background and so forth. So super excited for today's call. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course, man. No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Where do we start?
Yeah, I know. God, I was like looking at so many of the reasons why you created cyber yoga, which I'd love you to touch on in a second. But I think what would be helpful just to give all the listeners some context is, yeah, talk a little bit about your background. Like, rewind a little bit, go back as far as you think is appropriate for us to sort of understand yourself. And, we'll sort of go from like that stage all the way up into like what you do today. And I think that will provide a nice backdrop for diving a little bit more specifically into like how you take care of yourself and so forth. So yeah, just so we don't lose anything in translation, if you can,
Okay.
share a little bit about Lamonte and cyber yoga and why you created it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So where do I start? Okay, so basically the history of cyber yoga. Well, first I guess I'll start off with my background. So I grew up as a kid in Hollywood. My mother was a talented singer, and she wanted to make it in Hollywood. So she moved me and my brother to Hollywood with my stepdad at the time. So I didn't have the best of family background structure. My mom left my real dad because he used to physically abuse her and beat her. And so she moved out of Ohio to California, and she had a new boyfriend, my stepdad, at the time. to move to California and to start a new life and to make it in Hollywood. So I was pretty much raised in Hollywood. I was a huge fan of like Michael Jackson and superhero and martial arts movies and films. And so I was really, really inspired by all that. Like I really wanted to get into either martial arts or acrobatics or something like that. And then I had found breakdancing at the time. I found breakdancing later on, but I had a lot of anger when I was a kid because it is, I grew up in a very abusive home, so had a lot of anger and had to like channel this anger into something constructive. So fast forward until I'm like 18, 19, I get into breakdancing, and it was like really, it was amazing to me. It was like my outlet, where basically where I can go to allow myself freedom. It's never going to talk back to me. It's never going to verbally abuse me or hit me or beat me or whatever. So breaking was kind of like my freedom, kind of like my place I go to be, expressive. Sorry, as a B, expressive, and to find peace and find like a place where I can go to just with quiet, something different. And so I did that for a long time and got really good at it. And started doing competitions and all these things and traveled the world with it. I got into a crew and we just started just dominating the battle scene and just got really good at it. And then I wanted to get into TV and film, movies and commercials. So that was happening at the same time. So I was actually fulfilling my dream, dancing, with breakdancing and traveling and movies and commercials and all that. But I still had a lot of anger. Like I still had a lot of anger that needed to be released, and there was a lot of trauma, embedded trauma, from being physically beat as a kid. So there was still something there. And then dealing with that, trying to like sweep it under the rug and try to just deal with it on my own, and not really understanding where the root cause was. And obviously, it was a trauma. And then I created CyberYoga years later because basically I wanted to get into yoga because I knew I needed something a little bit more spiritual. And I realized I was kind of like damaging my body, was being really extreme with myself, really hard on myself about my practice. And, breakdancing, street culture is very aggressive. Um, so it was like, okay, I need something to ground me and something really spiritual so I can find a good foundation. And so I got into yoga. I started taking yoga classes and I felt really amazing doing it. And that's when the spiritual journey actually started. Like I started to understand like, oh, wow, I feel different, about honoring my body, honoring my spirit, more peace and more compassion, more love. And I got into that, and then I stopped doing yoga for a little bit. I had stopped, and then I had got into, me and my wife had split up at the time, so I had a really rough time that year. This was in the year of 2020, 2012. 2012 was a really hard year for me. That whole year I was in a depression. So then I got back into yoga, and then I promised myself, I said, you know what, if I get out of this darkness and this depression, then I promised that I would inspire others with the practice, with the cyber yoga, well, with the practice, like with my practice. And so after I, got into yoga, I started feeling good again. I felt straight, strong, focused, and disciplined. Then I had this idea that I wanted to create a brand, like a brand or a name that's going to basically symbolize all my different disciplines, which is acrobatics, breakdancing, yoga, and like future movement. So I was thinking really hard. I was like thinking for like, I'm like, what can I call it? Like, I want to have a brand name, like a Nike or Adidas or a Coke or Sprite, but like a name for what I do. So I'm a fan of like sci-fi and tech and future. Like, I'm a futurist. I love just tech and
Yeah.
future. And I grew up watching all these tech movies like The Matrix and Terminator and this sci-fi stuff. So I was like, well, what I do with my movement is very progressive. I would say it's very futuristic and timeless. So I was just like thinking of these names. I was like, should I call it like Neo Yoga or Neo Movement? And then one day I was watching the Terminator movie, uh, Terminator 2. That's my favorite movie. And I remember one of the main characters, well, not the main character, but one of the characters of the movie was the one that was responsible for creating Cyberdyne systems. It was a black man, and his name was Miles Dyson. And so he's the one that created Cyberdyne systems that created Skynet. And I was like, cybernetic? And I was like, oh my God, cyber yoga. Because I wanted to, at first it was a cool name. I was like, man, that sounds really dope. It sounds really tech. It just catches. It just sounds so great. Cyber yoga is like a perfect name. But then I delved into the deeper aspects of what cyber yoga is. And it's like, the acronym was Calisthenics, Yoga, Breakdance, Evolution, Revolution. And cyber, it's like we are like in essence like machines, right? But we're spiritual machines. We're like physical tech, God's physical technology interface with spirit. And so I was like, oh, okay. I was like cyber yoga. And the concept is that we're going into the new age of the tech age, which is happening actually now. But we're lost if we don't integrate the spirituality and God into that tech space. So that's why I coined the term cyber yoga, because we're the spiritual machines. And it's our job to maintain the humanity going into the tech space with integrity. And so it wasn't, so the name was created. And then I just did a post on Instagram one time and it went viral. And I was like, oh my God, this is a sign. This is a sign that I'm onto something. And then that's when I started posting and people were like, who is this cyber yoga guy? Like, this is like, and at the time I was like posting these poses that no one in the yoga world was doing. There was no one in the yoga world was doing these poses. It was like revolutionary. So I could say that I'm the one that changed the face of yoga on Instagram, because I started to create these poses and concepts, thinking outside of the box of the yoga poses and the norm. I was just coming out with these very abstract, very innovative concepts and poses. And fast forward to now, not now I see everyone doing these poses and stuff like that. But it's like I'm the one that had this vision and this idea that we can always create outside of the foundation. You know, God creates us. God creates us to create. So cyber yoga is going really well. But then I realized, I was like, you know what? I still have to do some deeper work. It wasn't until I had the call to dabble into ayahuasca, psilocybin, but I heard about this medicine years ago, but I was like kind of terrified to face it and to face myself. I was really terrified of psychedelics. But my girlfriend at the time, she was going through something, so she went to a ceremony, and she went, and then she told me about her experience, and I picked her up on a Sunday, and then we go back to her place, and then I remember having this profound conversation with her. When she came back, she was in a tub, we're talking about life, and it was like the most advanced intellectual conversation I ever had with anyone in my life. And I knew that she had tapped into some space or some kind of download of information and data. And I felt like the medicine was like speaking to me through her, basically saying, Lamont, you're ready to come and sit, to sit with Mother Aya, and it's time for you to sit with yourself. Like instantaneously, I knew. I was like, oh, this is a sign for me to come and sit, because before I was always terrified, and I didn't know anyone that had did the medicine in person to have conversations with. But she was definitely on the next level of comprehension of intellect and spiritual awareness. It was so deep, and I was like, okay, it's time. And so that's what led me on my first ayahuasca experience, and then deeper healing.
So, I love the background, and I love the fact that like so many other guests on the show have used their personal life experiences as a way to create a brand, a company, courses, a living, if you will, and finding ways to help other people who have struggled with similar issues. I know you're really big on mental health and well-being, and I think, at least from what I read on CyberYoga, so much of the idea behind it is to leverage things that you're good at, right? It's the art, it's the breakdancing, but it's also to blend it with the spirituality, the healing, and to help other people that are struggling in some way, shape, or form through that. So I love that, and thanks for providing a little bit of a backdrop.
I'm sorry, just to add to what you're saying, and thank you for the clarification. I want to say that cyber yoga in the beginning was really about, oh, I do these cool things in yoga and movement, but understanding the deeper comprehension of the concept of what cyber yoga is like it's something that was given to me when I went into the world, to the other side, the spirit world. I understood that this is a knowledge that's been passed down to me, and it's ancient and timeless. And so I understand that it's not just about the movements and the cool poses and the yoga, but it's more of a state of mind. Cyber yoga is a state of mind, uh, spiritually evolution, like upgrade yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I feel like God gave me this gift to just to simply share the concept and the state of mind. Anyone can be cyber yoga with what they're doing. It's not just, oh, you have to do yoga, you have to do these poses. It's about the state of mind that you're like a spiritual warrior, spiritual royalty of righteousness, love, compassion, evolution, understanding. Almost like the human being 2.0, like human 2.0. Sorry about the noise. I look at it as the next stage of what a human can be. The mental, physical, and spiritual upgrade interface with God's tech, because we are God's tech. We're the spiritual tech. We're the most advanced technology, right? Not the quantum computer, not the AI, not the iPhone. No, we are. And it's about me just to remind you of your power. Like, humanity is so powerful, and Sab Yoga is just here to show you, hey, we're amazing human beings, and we're amazing tech. And so, in essence, it's a state of mind.
No, I appreciate the clarity on that too. Let's start to dive in a little bit specifically to your, at least the way you define it, like the habit. We'll start with the habit, and then we'll flip over to a mindset. But you have all these practices that you do on a daily basis. What is the one at this point, Lamont, that really stands out to you? Like, what is the habit that supports your mental health, your well-being, your overall success the most at this stage of your life?
The most important habit, I would say, it's more the mental first. So I would
Okay.
say for me, waking up with like gratitude, waking up with gratitude and thanking God allowed me to wake. Like, it sounds so cliche, but when I allowed God back into my life, everything just made sense. And that comes with the clarity and the self love, and the gratitude daily. Just those simple concepts just in my head that, what, of course you're going to have a bad day. Nothing's ever perfect, but I would say about the mindset. And so for me, when I healed a lot of the trauma and the wounds that I, had gathered my childhood, I understood what I was holding on to. And I understood, oh, I was holding on to all these things, and it wasn't allowing me to be grateful for what I have. Um, it was just that simple, like mentality first, like more about the mental, but more just understanding. Oh, okay. I healed this trauma, and I was shown like what I was holding on to, and then I understood that it wasn't serving me anymore, and I had to learn how to let it go, wholeheartedly, with authenticity, because some people can be comfortable with their suffering and not even realize it. So for me, I was like, okay, this is what I'm holding on to, and now I'm grateful for everything. So my mentality is now like when I wake up, I just thank God for me allowing me to wake up, and I, I believe with just that intention first starts my day. Just waking up with the mentality of saying, thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to wake up. Thank you for my health. Thank you for my wife. Thank you for my friends and my gifts, first and foremost. And I just keep this is like my default first before anything. And then I'll start my physical practice. And then even how I go about my physical practice is not like me not being hard on myself or not pushing myself or me getting angry or talking down to myself. Everything is in harmony. Everything is in peace. Everything is in love and like compassion for myself, and say, okay, everything's going to be okay. No matter what, God has my back. And this is my default. So with this like intention and the mindset, I have like I have my spiritual armor on. If it makes any sense, it just makes everything so much lighter. Life is way lighter when I set these intentions in my head from an authentic place. Not saying it, oh yeah, I'm saying it, but really feeling it with authenticity. Like I feel it and know this from a genuine place, not from the wounded place, but from the place of healing and understanding and self-love and loving others. And these are all the principles of God and Jesus. It's like love thy neighbor and love yourself. Like honor, respect, honor your family, forgiveness. That's a huge one for me, to forgive everything, to forgive everyone that harmed me, to forgive my dad, my stepdad, people that harm me. I just learned to forgive, and I'm like, I just felt this weight. So everything, my default, just the package is I just wake up with gratitude and love, first and foremost before anything.
It's interesting the way you talked about that. You use the words letting go, and it had me sort of like trying to figure out. I mean, you sort of leaned in with like gratitude rather than habit. You focus really quickly on mindset, which I think is great. You sort of said gratitude is like the sort of the way you frame your day, but the way you were talking kept bringing in this idea of like letting go and being at peace with the way certain events have sort of unraveled in your life. And I don't know, it made me wonder if like not to question your own mindset, if you will, but it's almost like the marriage between both gratitude and letting go that sort of serve as like the soil in which you operate your day. It sounds like both of
Absolutely.
those are very equally important, at least in the way that you sort of, yeah, set into your day. Is that
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for me to really understand these concepts is for me doing the ayahuasca or doing the psilocybin self journeys, like going into these ancient medicines, and I can't put into words the depth and the comprehension of information that this reality suppresses from us. Like living in this 3D matrix, I understand we're here to play the game and to do what's right, the free will, to spread the love. But when you go to these places and when you experience the medicine, and sometimes it's not easy. Like you're facing yourself, and it's not easy. But just the vastness and infinite advanced concepts, I can't put into words, but what I can say is that out of the bulk of all of those deep journeys and travels in the, I guess, say spirit realm, every time it's checking me and saying, okay, Lamont, what lesson did you learn? And it's always in that of love,
Mm.
acceptance, forgiveness, accepting yourself, honoring yourself, respecting yourself, forgiving others. Those things, like, of course, I have these very intricate, some hard ones, but every time I do a journey, it reminds me, every time it says at the end, okay, what did you get? And it's always that of love. Just a simple concept of love. And it sounds so cliche, but when you go to this space and you understand the power, I guess I would say God and love is the same thing. It's so incredible information that's being suppressed from us. But anyway, essence, it's always saying love. And my thing was always like, okay, I can't sell myself. I have to stand my ground. I'm not going to compromise my integrity for anything, not for some company or some brand or some gig. And I'm always being tested. Life is testing me. Okay, what are you going to do? Where are you at? Where's your integrity? And always knowing your worth, knowing your truth, not selling yourself. Loving yourself, but not in a way of narcissism, but respecting yourself. Because people, like, I went through my whole life not understanding that I didn't even love myself. Like, I never understood what loving myself was or having unconditional love. I never really understood it until medicine was like, oh, let me show you what love is. And to the point where I started bawling, crying, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And now I learned to allow myself to cry, allow myself to weep, because I was holding on to so much anger and so much rage and so much trauma that I had to release it. Because the body stores information, the body stores trauma. And if you don't release it, you can get sick, you can get cancer, you can mental illness. I mean, look at the byproduct of society now. Look at all the
Yeah.
homeless people on the street, and look at how people treat the homeless. Look at how people treat each other. So people are dealing with their own trauma, right? Their own individual trauma, and then we have like society trauma. And what do we all need? Is love, kindness, compassion. And guess what? Sometimes we don't even have that for ourselves. So the medicine showed me in so many layers and levels. And I'm gonna go back to Jesus and God, but that was his message, was just love. Not judging others, not condemning others, but just love. The concept, simple concept of love. Unconditional love. Sometimes it's hard to comprehend if if you're not healed or you have trauma. But just everything boils back down to love.
Yeah, I'm I'm right there with you. I read a great book called Proof of Heaven, which I would recommend anybody. It was I actually read it because it was more on the neuroscience. It was about a neuroscientist and sort of his near-death experience, if you will, and having I think it was a bacteria that was affecting his brain and put him into a coma. And the short of it is he had this very vivid near-death experience when he was in this coma, and he remembered the details to such a rich degree. I mean, such detail. And from a scientific perspective, um, he shouldn't have had any memory because he was in this coma and this bacteria was affecting a very specific part of his brain that, from a scientific perspective, should have just shut down his ability to have any recollection of what was happening. And yet he was in this coma, he had this near death experience, and he sort of walks through in the best detail he can of, flying with angels and meeting God and what that whole experience was like. And then he comes out of this whole death experience and he shares it, and everybody's looking at him like he's completely crazy because, one, it is very colorful the way he's describing it, but all the doctors are like, dude, there's no way you could have had any memory. Like you had a bacteria that was affecting a part of the brain that shut down your ability to have memories. And he's like, look, dude, I had this experience. Anyways, it's a beautiful story, but the theme of his near-death experience, which, I mean, is just like a tearjerker, is just love. I mean, as he was describing God, and whether you believe it or not, like, it's up for individual interpretation, if you will, but it was so vivid, and he was having a hard time putting the feelings into words. But I think the best he could do was say that it was like this overabundance of acceptance and love, um, which I'm a huge advocate of. And I think as we get to the very last question of this podcast, you'll appreciate it, because yeah, I do think like that is in a lot of ways the only thing that really matters at the end of the day: self-love, self-acceptance. And obviously we're all individual parts of this collective, and it's the collective that, is the beehive. And I don't know, I could totally go there with you on the futuristic stuff. um but you've got this gratitude. So I started the question off with a habit that is fundamental. You quickly went to a mindset in gratitude and sort of letting go, and that makes a lot of sense. So let's pivot from that mindset, and now that sort of built the foundation in which you operate from. Is there a habit that really stands out for you? I mean, I know you have this practice. I don't know if it's your
I mean,
practice that is more fundamental.
y- yeah, I would say my foundation, the core, is still maintaining my physical, because my avatar has to interface with this 3D reality matrix. So um, I love movement. I love training. I love to create, but how I create is just as important. So I do maintain my physical practice. That's my discipline. Um, this is where the cyber yoga movement stuff comes in. Um, yeah, so there's that, but then there's the interfacing of the mental aspect as well. So it's the mental and the physical and spiritual in unison. So they're all connected. So if I'm doing my physical practice, I'm still maintaining the spiritual integrity in my practice. I'm like, okay, don't push yourself. Listen to your body. Like learning to actually listen to my body. Okay, it's all right. My body says rest. Okay, I'll rest. Don't push it so hard. So I learned to have a deeper communication even with my body, myself, because it's an exo spacesuit. So some people don't even realize, and even in the journeys, it was saying, create a relationship with yourself and your body. Like be your best friend. How often are you sitting with yourself and take time for yourself, you, outside of family, outside of work, outside of deadlines and schedules? But how often are you sitting with you and learning how to create a genuine relationship with yourself?
So
So I,
where does this practice come up for you? Is this like a daily thing for you? Is
it's a
it?
daily
I
thing.
feel like it's more outdoors than it is indoors. But sort of walk us through, like, what are some of the more mechanical components to it?
The mechanical, as far as like the physical practice, it could be anywhere. I could be in the street, I could be at home, I could be on the mat or grass. There's so many things. Like if I'm on the grass right here, I'll start grounding. I'll put my feet on the ground, start grounding. Or if it's like a strength practice, okay, I do handstands. If it's movements and ideas and concepts, I sit down. I start to formulate ideas I call them cyberglyphs. They're like these shapes I do, and I call them cyberglyphs. They're like encoded messages, sacred geometry poses. And so there's different parts of my practice that I compartmentalize. So I don't try to put it all in one thing. Okay, one day I'll do handstands, one day I'll do flexibility yoga concepts. Another day I'll sit with myself, and maybe I don't do any more microdosing as much. I started to learn to just integrate the lessons into my life, kind of just chill, because the medicine was like, hey, it's time for you to integrate. You don't have to come back here anymore. Integrate God's lessons. So I started doing that. But I would say every day I do handstands. I do have a physical practice, but the first thing I do when I get up, gratitude. It's just starts my day, gratitude. Or if I wake up with my wife, I say, hey, morning, I love you. Make it a point that we don't just hop on our phones, but we look at each other, tell each other we love her, we love each other. We start our day. And then the first thing I'll do in the morning, I'll drink water. So there are some things I do, but my foundation is definitely handstands and strength every day. Maybe if I want to, I'll take a day off, which is kind of hard for me even then. But every day I'm doing something physical. But always with the mental, with the mindset. Even when things are hard and difficult and challenging, I'm like, okay, life is throwing some things at me. I have to apply all the teachings, all the learnings into this reality, because it's pointless if you're not going to use it when the time comes. One thing is to talk about it and to say it, but then when the opportunity and the event happens, this is when you apply the messages and apply the teachings to that event.
Is the practice that you do, whether it's handstands or any other poses or calisthenics or yoga, there's obviously a physical component to it, but you've also very clearly said, hey, there's a mental component, there's a spiritual component to this as well. So when you're doing this stuff on a daily basis, is there a specific intention you have? For some people, let's say I just need to move my body, but how do you think about your intention as you sort of oscillate between physical, mental, and spiritual as it relates to this practice? Like, what can you give us like an example of how you sort of think of those three modalities as it relates to your practice?
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so basically, I would just say, for me to lead by example, like even when I started to change my mentality and how I post, people can feel this sense of peace and zen when I move. They can feel it. So I set the intention of healing the viewer with my movement, almost like a hypnotic, but not in a way of me trying to control you, but me to heal you, to liberate you. Because my intention is going to the movement. Therefore, when it's being recorded, the essence is recorded. So when you're watching the video, you're feeling the energy. You're actually almost kind of charging from it. And at the same time, I'm charging myself. So the intention is to heal others through the movement with the intention. So I'm like almost like praying through my movements, feeling it, exercising, but then showing new concepts too. Like my whole thing is about innovation. I love innovating. I love innovation. So my whole thing is to bring the innovation concepts of movement and thought leadership into this matrix. Just advanced concepts. Just advance. Well, I mean, I don't even say advanced. I say it's just what I'm receiving here to remind you all of your power. Like I'm just one of the droplets in the ocean, right? And I'm here to lead by example. Like, oh, I can't just wake up in the morning and magically do this. It shows I have years of practice and discipline and focus into my craft. And if someone can do the same thing in their field, that's CyberYoga. It's a mindset.
I
So
love
yeah,
that.
I'm always creating. I'm always creating new ideas, Sometimes I have to stop because I have so many ideas and concepts, and I don't have enough time to put it all out there. So right now, I'm trying to get my business up and running so it's automated, so I can create the passive income, so I have the time to create more. But now I have to work. I have to work these different jobs and whatever until my business is running. But it goes up to me if I could just full time just CyberYoga, creating lectures and workshops and just that and monetizing. I'll be super happy. That's my purpose, just that. But life is saying, hey, I have to humble you in different departments and take certain things away. So you have to go through a little struggle. But it's okay. Like I accept it. I know it's part of the journey.
Yeah.
But
Well, the work you do is just amazing, and I think as you pointed out, like it's I think a lot of the intent behind some of the poses is to inspire people, not just in terms of what you're capable of doing, but also, and I love the way you said it, because I'm a big believer of we all have such phenomenal potential, and it's just discipline and repetition and applying it where you feel your purpose is, and like I think anybody can become phenomenal at something. And so when I see the poses you make, and it is inspiring, right? And so I can only imagine, the workshops and people that get to see you live, and sort of the effect that you have on other people. So it seems like if it's working, which I think is which is phenomenal. Let me ask you this. Um, one of the really big questions that I like to touch on is, so much of these podcasts are focused on the individual and your background and your habits and your mindsets. But I guess is like one of the final questions here is, and you've touched on it a couple times throughout this episode, is, we're still part of a much larger collective. As you said, you are a drop in the ocean, as am I. And so I want to go back to this concept that you brought up earlier of like loving kindness, because it's something that I think a lot about. And so the question is specifically, if you could wave a wand over all of humanity, and you could get all 8 billion plus of us to embrace some habit or some mindset that you personally believe would nudge us in a more loving and kind direction. Is there one habit or one mindset that you really believe would sort of transcend us as a species and sort of nudge us in that more loving and kind direction?
You're saying like if sorry, it was a very elaborate question. Was it like you're asking me what action would be needed to help alleviate?
Yeah, like
Or
is there one habit or mindset that you believe if we all embraced would
oh, okay.
collectively nudge us in a more loving and kind direction? Um, is there one that sort of stands out to you?
I think mine is just very simple. Just leading with love and kindness. Like even just the gesture and the action. You know how powerful it is if you just smile at someone? Like if you just walk into a store and you see their even yesterday I just tested it. I was like, let me just smile. People don't smile, people aren't nice. It sounds so crazy, but everything goes back to God. Like it's just love. Like, oh, I didn't even tell you, but I created another discipline outside of CyberYoga. It's me and my wife, and we call it Neo Sutras,
Hmm.
right? So Neo Sutras, imagine like CyberYoga, but with two people. But now it's the divine feminine and divine masculine. And so me and my wife both come from tough backgrounds. My wife, she's from Siberia, and she grew up in a very hard life um, in Russia. So of course we both have not so good family backgrounds, but God put us together, and we created something called Neo Sutras, and we started to create together, and we started making these videos. People started to feel something, and I felt like it's just another thing, like another thing that here to re-inspire the world with our love for each other, me and my wife. So even our movements with the intention, God was like, okay, I'm gonna put you both together with our creative minds and our wounded backgrounds, and then focusing on healing. We both done the medicine together, and now we understood, and so we're creating with this intention. And Neo Sutras was born. So there's a Cyber Yoga, and then there's a Neo Sutras, and which is about the new foundation of a family structure or man and woman, but like loving, but like a futuristic spiritual concept of just the man being the man for the woman, and the woman being feel open enough and feminine to feel that she can trust again. So it's about this whole connection. So if you see our work on Neo Sutras, like you'll understand. We did one video that went viral, and people were like, we touched people in a way that they couldn't even really understand themselves. So again, it comes back to kindness. It comes back to kindness and love. And I
Yeah,
would
it's awesome.
say,
I'm looking at it now. Beautiful poses.
yeah, yeah, it's about the intention. So it evolved from me into Neo Sutras to, because right now in society, there's a disbalance in humanity there's so many extreme things. There's toxic masculinity, there's feminism, there's so much division.
Yeah.
And I understand these programs are here in place and they have a specific reason why they're here. But I think what causes it is trauma. The trauma from the person. Or, the feminists are only that way because they were hurt by men. They didn't have trust in men, or they got physically abused or emotionally abused. So they're creating this construct or this idea out of trauma. And again, we're not understanding, we're just accepting all these terms. And then we have this toxic masculinity. So could it be super macho and super, super? I mean, yeah, but you can be a father, be a father, be a man, to be strong for your family, to be strong for your wife, but at the same time be vulnerable, open up. There's just these new concepts. So we're even subconsciously we're just creating this content and these movements together. And then when we launched the video, people were like, "Oh my God, we feel something." Every time we perform on stage with each other in front of the audience for an event or something, people start crying. And we know that we touched their hearts. Because everyone has some wounding somehow. Like, you can lie to yourself all you want, but everyone has some kind of wound. I feel like when we perform, or if I perform, our movements with the intention and the frequency and vibration penetrates that wound. And then people start crying, they start feeling something. Because a reminder, in essence, is love. Because love is the truth. The love, when you experience this unconditional love, you're like, oh my God, you forgive everyone and everything. So it goes back to love, and we're in a space and society where there's a lack of love. So people's hearts close, and they're not able to receive love or give it because they're hurt, and the trust is gone because we're living in an untrustworthy system. So that's why I feel it's our job, and this is where the unconditional love comes in. Again, I'm going to go back to the Jesus and Bible, the God. You still love people unconditionally because they have wounds. They don't understand that they have wounds. They don't understand they have wounds. That's where the compassion comes in. So if we all, as a collective, started to lead with love and compassion, the world will change, but we know that that's part of the balance, and everyone has their free will and everyone's on their path. So you can't force anyone to love. They have to experience it for themselves because they have to learn how to receive it. And the only way it happens is when your heart opens. So we're in a society where a lot of hearts are closed. There's no trust. There's a lot of wounds. And there's a lot of programs in place to maintain this narrative of disharmony and automation of humanity, social media, and all these constructs. So I would say to penetrate that is love.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, love is definitely the answer. Where can people go to learn more about you, Lamont? Where's the right place to send them?
Awesome. You can go to my website, cyberyoga.com, or Instagram at CyberYoga, TikTok CyberYoga, YouTube at CyberYoga. There's that. And then the other side is Neo Sutras on Instagram, Neo Sutras on YouTube. And Neo, it's Neosutras. Neo Sutras means new language. So anywhere under CyberYoga, yeah. And then on Facebook at CyberYoga1. But anywhere you just go on Google and type up CyberYoga, you'll see me everywhere.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure to include all that in the show notes. Lamont, thanks so much for being on. You obviously, like, I feel like I could have taken this conversation in so many different directions. When you were first talking about like the futuristic component and the Matrix and just even psychedelics and like our part in the as part of this collective, like I could totally jam out with you for quite a while on that. I've got some pretty strong concepts. We all are on our own journey, but collectively, all those journeys get woven together, and we are on a journey, if you will, which I find so interesting. But I think the big theme here was just love and self-compassion and kindness, which are all topics that I think very deeply about consistently. So thanks for bringing your perspective to that, and thanks so much for being a guest on the show. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you so much for having me, man. And hit me up anytime for more. I'm sure I'll have more. I'm in my journey and everything is unfolding day by day. So thank you for having me, and always, down to do more. So blessings to you and yours.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Standard. Before we go, click on the link in the show notes of this episode to learn more about today's guest. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody who you think would benefit from it as well.